Welcome to the live stream of the Dorchester School District 2 Board of Trustees Board Meeting. These meetings are held on the second and fourth Monday of each month and always provide information regarding the operation of our district and schools. These meetings are recorded and posted at dd2.org/live. Before the meeting begins, please note these important announcements. Thank you for joining us this evening, and make sure to follow us on the Dorchester District 2 Facebook page at Team DD2.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our board meeting of April the 26th, and thank you to everyone who is listening to us virtually. I would like to call this meeting to order, and to begin that, I need an approval of the agenda, please. Motion made by Ms. Crosby.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Guthrie. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Now, if you would please, if you'd like to just join me for a moment of reflection. Thank you very much. Next, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd like to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we have public comments on agenda items. And I think we're going to begin with the Mr. Philip Hall.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm going to speak on a couple different things tonight. The first thing I'm going to speak about real quick is curriculum. As far as, I saw recently we're on SE for Ed, and I know that that's not Dorchester 2, but there are teachers that are part of SE for Ed. It's a radical group that has no place in our district. And I saw that recently, well, one of our middle schoolers' assignments was the Pillars of Islam. And I even saw, like I said, on SE for Ed, it said Ramadan 2021 is coming. What families need to know, what teachers need to know about Muslim students being tired, hungry, and dehydrated in your classes, so just watch out for them and take care of them. If we're going to teach Islam, that's fine, but let's teach it good and bad. Let's talk about the 19 Islamic extremists that took down our buildings in 9/11, which this district never noticed this year. During 9/11 that day, there wasn't even a moment of silence. But we're in the SE for Ed, it's also Happy Ramadan several different times, but we can't say Merry Christmas. So I don't know where we're going as a district or as a country, but it's not in the right direction. When I was deployed overseas, the reason that a lot of individuals were tired was because they were up building roadside bombs to take out me and my troops. So if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about everything. Let's teach the 10 Commandments. How many of our kids know that if they're not taught it at home? I'm going to leave that right there. The second thing I want to talk about is masks. Our children, and Mr. Pai, I'm gonna speak directly to you because I believe that you've dedicated a lot of your career to your children. Heck, you have a school named after you. I think that you've given your career to kids, and that's great. But right now, you know, and I believe there's other board members that know that they were out for too long. They shouldn't have been out as long as they were out, and they shouldn't be wearing masks anymore. The percentage that kids have of getting COVID, let alone transferring it to someone, is so low. Yet our 6th grader now is getting nosebleeds. So we're going to be taking him to a doctor, and he's going to get a medical exemption from wearing a mask. When I contacted Joseph Pai Elementary, the teachers told me I would put if your child comes to our school, our 2nd grader comes to our school without a mask and refuses to wear it, they'll be socially distanced or put in isolation. There was just a study done where it said social distancing doesn't make anything. There was just a study done in Stanford that said masks don't work at all. The other school, Fort Dorchester High School, said our kid would be marked absent and sent home. So you're going to deny education or isolate my children. Again, I ask, what country are we living in? Do the right thing this time. Take the mask off our children.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. The next is Annette Clowen. Did I pronounce that right? No? Clone, okay.
Mine's going to be very short and sweet. These masks do not work, guys. Let's think about it. If they truly worked, wouldn't we wear the same ones? Wouldn't we basically have ones that maybe are made strictly for it? We have these paper-looking things, or we have the ones that we make up. They do not work, guys. We need to stop this, okay? And that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Brian Peacher.
Alrighty. Hi, my name is Brian Peacher. I have 3 children. One goes to DD2 school, and others at a preschool that does not require masks. The other's at a private school that only requires masks in the hallways and per teacher discretion in class, never outside. I'm here to advocate for our kids in public school, for their physical and mental health. I'm here to advocate for parental choice. No child should be forced to cover their face, nose, and mouth where they breathe for 8 hours a day and outside on the playground. Personally, I don't know any parents who are in favor of the DD2 forced mask policy. I provided DD2 results of one online poll showing parents were 11-1 against the mask policy. I asked DD2 if they conduct their own poll to see what parents think to help in making policy as well as their reopening plans. Today, 8 months later, I still don't have any answers to my concerns or questions. Instead, DD2 called me a bully and a minority, and yet DD2 won't even answer if they would do a poll to find out what parents think. Either DD2 doesn't want to know what parents think or doesn't care, or both. When I mentioned in Berkeley County, masks are only required in the hallways and optional, I was told to move to Berkeley County by one of y'all up there. Just no matter what you call me or how y'all ignore my concerns, I will never sit down and stop advocating for our kids. Masking kids' faces for 8 hours a day and outside on the playground is not okay. Forcing kids to breathe their own exhalation, bacteria, and whatever else is not okay. And we have no idea how this is affecting their lungs and oral health. Hindering kids' language learning skills, not being able to read lips and communicate normally is not okay. Hurting kids' social, emotional development and happiness, not being able to see smiles, share laughs, and see emotions of their teachers and friends is not okay. Making some kids mental to the point that they think they're diseased or their friends are will make them sick is not okay. As of today, the 7-day moving average of cases in Dorchester County is 39. Dorchester County has a population of 162,000. That's 0.024% of the population. So for 0.024%, we are masking our kids all day and outside in the playground for 0.024% of the population that tested positive. Studies show masks are not effective in preventing influenza. Influenza is the exact same size as COVID, so why are y'all doing this to our kids? I've seen photos of the inside of kids' bloody masks, you have kids getting headaches, too afraid to go outside without a mask. No one knows the long-term mental and physical harm being done. This has got to stop. Parents are educated and informed enough to know what's best for their kids. Like everything else, this disproportionately affects the older population with health issues like diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. The stats show this does not affect younger healthy adults and kids the same, and that's a nearly 100% recovery rate. Let's isolate and protect the older, vulnerable population, not harm our kids every day, covering their mouths and noses and faces where they breathe for 8 hours a day on the playground. Everyone has different needs to conduct their own risk assessment. We can match up teachers and students who want a choice, and those teachers and students have more concerns. If some students or teachers feel more compromised, let them do virtual wear, N95 masks, or sit behind plexiglass, but don't hold everyone hostage. I think it'd be great if we could try to accommodate everyone here, because I know there's teachers who don't want this either. Ask the DD2 start by unmasking our kids in the playground immediately and outside. Ask the DD2 stop hurting our kids, and I ask for DD2 to give parents a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. Next on the list is Irene Cronin.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Irene Cronin. The first time I petitioned you in support of 5-day-a-week face-to-face instruction and the mask mandate was the 28th of September. I'm very familiar with basic virology, at least in a layman's terms. One of my children has cystic fibrosis and attended school here in Dorchester County. I have another child still in Dorchester County. And I fully believe that the result of lockdowns and masking is a resounding example of the remedy is worse than the disease. In 1 year's time, the powers that be went from asking us to cooperate in 15 days to slow the spread to telling us that they have no intention of reducing COVID-19 mandates until we're at the level of virus is so low it's not a threat at all. Then at that point, you can start thinking in terms of not having a uniform wearing of masks. And that's according to Dr. Fauci. There will never be a time when the level of any virus is so low it is not a threat at all. I truly believe that every single one of you have the best intentions for our children at heart when you make board decisions, but I'm going to plainly lay out data which shows why mask mandates in school is anything but beneficial. COVID-19 has a survivability rate of 99.5 for those under the age of 70. To put that in perspective, the survivability rate of the flu is at 99%. So if you're under the age of 70, you have a greater chance of dying from the flu than you do from COVID. A Danish community-based randomized controlled study conducted in a setting where mask wearing was uncommon and not among other recommendations to wear surgical masks when outside the home, among others, did not reduce at conventional levels of statistical significance incident of SARS-CoV infection compared with no mask at all. Childhood is the most sensitive time for the immune system. That's when active immunity is formed. You are hampering the children's ability to form their natural immune systems. Wearing a mask for extended periods of time can create unwanted side effects such as mask mouth, and that's going to lead to dental decay, bleeding gums, and also put you at higher risk for infections and inflammatory conditions. Children are required to see a person's face, facial expression, and we're going to have to skip through some of this. Okay. Your only job is to serve the needs and welfare of our children attending DD2 schools, and these mask policies have absolutely zero to do with the welfare of our children or scientific data at this point. Those that wanted the COVID vaccine have the ability to get it. Those that want their children to mask until the end of days are more than welcome to, but they may want to have them start wearing goggles as well because it also enters through your eyes. Primary reason for speaking here today is to make it clear in the future you cannot fall back on saying you didn't have the data to make the decisions or claim ignorance to the definitive health risks you're subjecting the children to. I emailed this to you, so you can.
Thank you, Tony. Next is Jordan Hall.
Thank you all for having me again. We've definitely sent out a lot of emails, a lot of different answers we've also received back, and I'm just going to read a few of these real fast because we're trying to get a definite answer here. From the office of Lee Smith today, actually, current on one of the emails was a phrase that at the current time, the State Department of Education is continuing to mandate the wearing of face coverings. Also, from the office of Spearman, we have provided teachers, schools, and districts flexibility in implementing this policy so that it best fits the needs of their local community by allowing face coverings to be removed upon teacher and administrative direction. Which is it? Also from the Spearman office, we anticipate making the face coverings policies a strong recommendation and not a requirement for districts at the conclusion of the current year. I hope this is true, and I hope that you will follow through. My husband had just talked about when we had called Joseph High, and they talked about if you were unable to social distance a child, they would isolate your child. So you're going to isolate a healthy child while they're trying to learn? They're going to be socially ostracized because they're a healthy child at school trying to learn. That's absolutely insane. We also talked about the nosebleeds. It's continuous. We could gladly pull out about 10 masks, and my child now has constant nosebleeds from school. Also, to add on to it, children of all ages now have had their photos taken of great achievements, everything from a honor roll to incredible artists that we have and musicians of all ages and in all grades. But not a single beautiful smile has been shown. They're all behind masks. What are the point of pictures? What are they going to remember? However, if you go to South Carolina Department of Education on the 8th picture down, we can see a great picture of Molly Spearman herself standing with 5 teachers who 4 of those 5 are all unmasked. Rules for thee, not for me. Slight hypocrite much. These masks have to come off for kids. They have to be, I don't care even if a kid wants it to be optional, gladly let them have that choice. Let parents have their choice. For those teachers right now who are saying that you need to homeschool your kids then, guess what? Sometimes these parents have to work to provide a home for those children to be schooled in. Not everyone has this life of being able to not work and be home, because if you've ever attempted to keep a child at home for 8 hours a day, constantly on their monitor, it's absolutely impossible. It's time for our children to get back to a regular school day and year, and I hope, Mr. Pye, you will work to make that happen. Thank you.
Next is Janet Armstrong.
Hello, everyone. I am a nurse. I've been in healthcare for 40 years. And what I've been seeing with the mask mandates is ridiculous. I see my neighbors, the children, coming home getting off the school bus, walking down the street with a mask on. They think it's normal. It has to stop. The Stanford study that was just provided in April of this year, they have proven that masks do not work. The only way a mask would work would be if they had an N95 mask. And this is ridiculous. You can't afford it, and we don't need it. You have a brochure that I've provided for each of you. And on this brochure, it even states that the National Institute of Health agrees that masks do not work. And as the other lady mentioned, children have a 97.7% chance of not getting COVID. And isn't it funny that there have been no flu? Where do you think it went? Did you wear masks for flu season? No, you didn't. So I think we have to be logical about this. We have to use common sense, and what we're reacting on is what you're seeing on TV. You know, don't watch TV. They're not telling us the truth. You know, I think that I don't have children in the school district, but I'm a taxpayer. And I'm concerned because this isn't right and we need to stop it. We need to stop it now. You need to do your due diligence just like we are doing right now. By taking our time to make you understand, we have had enough. No mask, we want normal. And if we don't get normal, I can assure you that people are not going to stand for it much longer. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Brockhart. You actually turned in one for two different things. So would you like to speak on, didn't you? No, I'm sorry, you did not. I'm sorry. No, you did not. I'm sorry. I thought it was yours. I was just going to ask you to combine them. I wasn't going to stop you from talking.
No, that's fine. All right, Ms. Hughes, Board, Mr. Pai, again, thank you for the time. Obviously, we're hearing from a lot of your constituents, a lot of parents, a lot of concerned folks. The big thing that I've said before, and I'll say again, it needs to start and end with respect. Now, I don't want to polarize the whole thing, so I'm not going to say that masks work all the time, because that's not true. But to start with a quick point of fact, the Stanford study that everybody has been so quick to pull out as proof is not actually a Stanford study. Stanford actually clarified that that was false credentials, and they completely disagree with everything in that study. And just so that I make sure that I've got the right one, titled Face Masks in the COVID-19 Era, a Health Hypothesis. So if that's the same one we're talking about, it's actually false.
That is not the same one.
Okay, that's the one that I've, so that's why I want to clarify. Thank you. That's why I want to clarify. So it's from Stanford's website. So anyway, hang on, I'm not trying to polarize. I'm not trying to polarize.
Mr. Brockhart,
I don't
please.
think that masks need to be worn 100% of the time in all situations. I don't think they should be worn on playgrounds. I don't think that they should be worn in classrooms that can afford the space, right? So again, I'm not trying to get everybody riled up. I think that it needs to be reevaluated. Now, there are parents that have children that are immunocompromised, and maybe they couldn't get into virtual academy, right? So somewhere in there is going to be somebody that has a need, right? They're mandated that they have to go to school, and school is supposed to provide safety. Now, it doesn't apply to everybody, I get it. But to make sure that it can account for everybody's needs, we need to have something that isn't just mask mandates. You go to school, you wear a mask 8 hours a day. Obviously, that doesn't work. We can't completely do away with all of it. Now, anecdotal evidence, I get it. Everybody's got their own stories. My story is actually fine. We've been COVID-free. I intend to completely be COVID-free. So everybody needs to agree upon what we can do together to try to keep moving this forward. There are further answers than just making a blanket statement. There are further answers than just offering one or two options. There are needs that families have that other families don't have. The children's mental health does need to be considered, right? Their physical health does need to be considered. So all of it needs to balance out, and you need to hear from both sides of the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brockhart. Okay, that's all on public comments. So next on our agenda, board members, you should have received the meeting minutes, the regular meeting of April the 12th. I need a motion to approve those.
I make that
Motion
motion.
made by Ms. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Crosby. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Next on the agenda is school highlights. Ms. Rayner.
Thank you, Chairman Hughes, members of the board, Mr. Pye. At this time, I would like to invite our Executive Director of Elementary Schools, Lori Heastep, to recognize 3 of our elementary schools who were recently named and received a national award. Ms. Heastep.
All right, we are going to lighten the mood a little bit, and one of the things that Capturing Kids' Hearts starts their meetings out with is tell me something good. So tonight, I'm going to tell you something good, not only about one school, but as Ms. Rayner said, about 3 of our elementary schools who have received the National Showcase School earning from Capturing Kids' Hearts. In order to do this, they follow, it's not really a program, but it's more about just a feel. And if any of you have walked into Alston Bailey, Oak Brook Elementary, or Sires Elementary, you know what I'm talking about. They truly do capture the kids' hearts, not only their hearts, and not only the kids, but their families and their community. They capture their hearts so they can capture their minds. And these 3 schools are the epitome of what Capturing Kids' Hearts are all about. They're not the only 3 schools in the district, and we have several that will be looking at possibly going for this award next year as well. But tonight, we're going to highlight Alston Bailey Elementary School. And Ms. Bodison, if you and or your team will stand. Oak Brook Elementary, you and your team. And the one thing to note about Oak Brook Elementary is this is the 3rd year in a row that they have been awarded the National Showcase School. And last but not least, Sires Elementary. Miss Blanchard, you and or your team, please stand. The last thing I want to say here is you all know how hard it has been this year, in the year of a pandemic, to find creative ways to engage and motivate and capture children. But these 3 schools have done it, and they've done it with finesse. So congratulations once again to our 3 National Showcase schools for Capturing Kids' Hearts. Very proud of you all.
Thank you, Ms. Heastep, and just a footnote to this recognition. I think what we're hearing from our families that are in the Capturing Kids' Hearts schools, it has so just enhanced the school climate and environment, and it not only touches children, but their entire family. So we're very, very proud of these schools. Congratulations again. And it's my pleasure to recognize another school that is going to be, we hope, the state South Carolina School Improvement Council School of the Year. They are one of 5 finalists that were announced about a month ago. They're the only school in the Low Country to achieve this outstanding distinction. And this is also the 3rd consecutive year that Flourtown has been one of the 5 finalists for this state award. And as the state organization, Tom Hudson, the director, said, Flourtown Elementary has done an extraordinary job of parent and civic engagement throughout the entire community. And I think that that is an understatement for that school, and it is motivated certainly by their desire to engage parents, but it does truly engage the whole community in making it a better school. And so I would like to recognize Ms. Carrie Ball, the principal, that is with us this evening, And on Saturday, May the 1st, there will be a virtual program when the South Carolina School Boards Association will announce the winners, or the winner, and we are hoping this will be the year of the bee. Congratulations. And I will send that link out to everyone who would like to tune in to see that live announcement of the winner. And lastly, we are very, very proud of our school district and school board members and the leadership, our principals, and so many folks that have worked hard this year under challenges and trying times to do what's best for our students. So we were more than excited when Mr. Pye was invited to attend the Somerville Rotary luncheon on last Wednesday, when they recognized community groups for their outstanding service, and I will read, in recognition of outstanding service to the greater Somerville community and for being a prime example of Rotary International's guiding motto, service above self. We are recognizing Dorchester School District 2 School District as Heroes of the Year for 2020. So Mr. Pye went and took several of us to represent everyone in the District 2 family, and it was quite an inspiring experience, and we so appreciate the Rotary's recognition. So this plaque we will hang very proudly in the district office. So congratulations, Mr. Pye, for your leadership in the school board. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Pye.
Okay, next on our agenda is the state of the district. Mr. Pye.
Mayor, we have several things. First of all, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and ask Dr. Harrison to update you on the virtual academy and some decisions that have been made and a little bit about our direction of that now that the numbers are in. And we've had meeting after meeting. I think we finally have that plan finally organized here, but we're still ahead of the other districts in the area, and we're working with them on some of the initiatives that we want to do.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Pye. Like Mr. Pye said, I had the pleasure of updating you on our virtual academy plans for next year. Just to give you a quick recap, our application process closed for families who are interested in virtual academy. That was March the 25th. We then sent our school teams those names for our schools to review based on criteria that we set forth and do approvals and denials for virtual academy. And that process ended April 12th, so our families were notified if they were approved or denied for a virtual academy option. Since that point, what we have done is we have met with our principals, our cabinet has met. We have reviewed several different models and different options that we could serve our students and our families virtually, and we received feedback from our cabinet and from our principals on the direction based on our numbers. And one of the things that we were basically guiding our discussion with our principals and everyone is that how can we most efficiently serve our families and our students? What is the best academic environment, basically academically sound way of serving the students of Dorchester 2, where our students would get a top quality education that is expected. And what we have decided to propose to our board is that our 4th and 5th grade elementary students, looking at our numbers and after having discussions on the best way to serve those students and families, we decided that the Low Country Education Consortium model, the Low Country Virtual Program, would be a great model for our students. And us being part of that consortium, what we could then do is then we could purchase seats for our families and our students in that model where they would have teachers and they would serve students in 4th and 5th grade a curriculum where it would be synchronous and some asynchronous learning. So that would be for our 4th and 5th grade. For our secondary students, our middle and our high school students, we decided that we would follow a similar model that we have in place this year. Our middle school and our high school principals felt very strongly about that we would keep it school-based, but really be a school-based, more of a district-type model where the middle schools would work with one another to accommodate student schedules. So you may have a class with kids from around the district, but it's served by a student that is, our teacher that is in one of our schools. Same thing for our high school. Our high school principals will get together and build a schedule accommodating those virtual academy requests within their school and working together as a district. But it would look very similar at the secondary level to the model that we had in place this year versus the standalone model. So wanted to present that to the board and answer any questions, if there were questions. Yes, ma'am?
How many end up for 4th and 5th grade? How many students?
How many applied?
How many students do you have for 4th and 5th grades?
4th was 104 and 5th 105.
And how many for the middle and high school?
Middle and high school, we had at 7th grade, or 6th grade's 84, 7th is 101, 8th grade we had 144.
And high school?
High school is 94 for 9th, 102 for 10th, 94 for 11, and 104 for 12, which is a total of 932.
Thank you.
May I ask, are we going to have it spread out? How are we going to have our teachers in this low country group? Do you have it figured out who's going to be doing what?
The Low Country Consortium basically will have their own group of teachers that would then teach those courses. Now, it could be a Dorchester 2 teacher that would like to teach in the consortium, would apply and go through that process. And then, or it could be a teacher from Charleston County or Berkeley County, since we are all in the consortium together developing this program. I would like to, I guess, just stress that it's not just an outside program. We are part of developing this. I'm on that committee. Dr. Capoletti serves on that, on the special education committee, where we're planning and discussing how the Low Country model will basically look and serve all districts.
Well, I know I sound prejudiced, but I know we have really good quality teachers. So I just wonder what kind of quality teachers this group has.
Yeah, and those teachers have not been selected yet, but we will have a seat at the table when that process happens. So we'll be interviewing for those teachers as well. I'll be on that committee. We'll have a couple of our elementary principals that will serve on that committee and provide feedback for those teachers that are being selected. We also will communicate with our families, since this is a shift from what we originally were thinking that the model may look like, but we'll communicate with families. An email will go out to principals tonight after this presentation, and if everyone is in agreement, an email will go out to our principals tonight. Our principals will then start communicating at the elementary level, start communicating with their families to see if virtual is still the option that they would like or not. And if they choose, well, the Low Country program is not what I prefer at this point, they can always opt out since we do have kind of a little bit of a change in our approach.
Well, can I ask too, has the Charleston and Berkeley County Board also approved this already? Do you know?
Charleston County, I believe, is tonight, Mr. Pye.
They finalized it tonight. They did first reading 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question as well, because a question was asked of me. If we have a student that is actually in our schools, but they want to go, they want a course that we don't offer, they will be allowed to take that course virtually through our virtual program or the consortium virtual program, whichever one offers it, correct?
We, being a member of the consortium, we do have the option and to utilize their courses. So we could use a course if we would like to. So that is an option at the secondary level. So a high school course, if they offer a course that we don't have a class or don't have, we could use the consortium for a supplemental for secondary level. Yes,
So
ma'am.
it's not like it's an all or nothing. It's not like you're either all virtual or you're all in school.
Well, and for the high school, there is no all virtual for the consortium.
Right.
So that wouldn't even
So
be
we're
an
providing
option
it
for the
all.
consortium. They're only K-8, so it could be for our middle school students. It is all virtual. They won't do supplemental for middle, elementary, but high school is a supplemental program. They have classes that we could take advantage of.
Okay.
But they will, sorry, they will still have a home school, the fourth and fifth graders who take advantage
They-
of the consortium.
They will still be attached to their home school. They'll still be a member of our district. They'll still be a student of our district.
And
So
their
yes,
test scores will come to that
test
home
scores
school.
will come back to the home school. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we know what the fee will be at this time? I mean, you said we would pay a fee. Do we know that yet? Is that decided?
We have an estimate of what it would be, but it really is, you can't really get the final fee until you look at the numbers and across districts, because it's a shared cost. So when you put all the districts together to look at how many students, how many teachers they have to have, and then they'll divide out that cost so that each district will only pay for their share of that shared model. So the cost will be spread out throughout the districts that are participating. The one thing I would point out with the low country model, you might get a cheaper model, but you always have to look at asynchronous and synchronous. And we feel in Dorchester too, that live interaction face-to-face with teacher is important. And meeting the bare minimum 25%, we don't feel like is the best thing that the state has put out, but we feel like the more the better. And the low country has, they've said 65 to 70% of the instruction will be synchronous instruction with a teacher.
And then one more question about our virtual academy for the 6th through 12th grade. So Governor McMaster just recently signed that bill saying that dual modality would not be allowed. So will that be an issue? Because I know this year we have had some teachers, she said it's going to look similar to this year. Will that be happening?
Our plan is to not have that and to not have teachers teaching both at the same time. So when we meet with our principals at the secondary level and we start building those schedules, we may supplement those programs with some of our partners like Ed Minimum and Apex. If we can't get a class without having to mix it like that, we may look and say, well, what does Ed Minimum offer that we could then serve those students? So our teachers aren't teaching both face-to-face and virtual at the same time.
Okay.
Our intention is to not do that.
Okay. Because I know from everything I've heard, I mean, our teachers have been amazing stepping up and doing that, and I think they've done an excellent job. But I've also heard feedback from them that they don't think it serves our students necessarily in the best interest of our students.
Yeah, we went that route in the middle of a
Sure,
pandemic when
absolutely.
we were just trying to.
No, and I know that,
yeah.
and this year, I agree.
Okay.
I think that we have done the absolute best with what yes, but I'm just talking about for next year.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, I just have one more question. And you may not know, none of us may know the answer, but I know that they're meeting tomorrow, the legislatures and everything. How is this funded, with state money, or will they approve this? Because I read somewhere where they may not approve virtual monies for teaching. Is this going to be state money? Is this going to be, explain that to me, please.
What I've heard when it comes to state funding, the only thing I've heard is they may reduce the per pupil that they give the district, but it wouldn't be
Right.
that they would not fund that student.
Okay.
But it would be that's what we're talking about, would be a reduced
So it's a
amount
reduced, will
that the
this,
state would then give based on what the South Carolina Charter virtuals receive.
okay. So will that affect this program?
I don't see it affecting our program.
Okay,
It would a little bit.
a little bit. Okay.
Well, if they passed it and we got reduced funding, we'd have reduced funding. But we still, it wouldn't, say that it would impact whether we're serving our students virtually or not.
And they may
Or
not
able
pass
to.
it, so we'll know tomorrow, I guess. Thank
They don't
you.
want us to make money off of it. In other words, if we pay $2,000 a child for the consortium, we get $10,000. What are we going to do with the other $8,000? So the point is, they're thinking if there's enough kids in some districts, then a district is using state money for other purposes besides for what they normally would for their student if they're outsourcing it. So I think it's to keep people honest,
Okay.
make sure they're not trying to find ways to circumvent. Of course, we're padded with the COVID monies that we received since all this was brought on by COVID. It would all qualify if we did find we were being charged something that was hard for us to reach or do. Those funds were intended for that, to maintain a quality education. As I said, the students are being screened to be successful because we just aren't serving anybody who wants to be served. Of course, any parent can put their child in the program if that's what they wish to do. But in our program, they need to meet certain criteria. We want the child to be successful. We need a young child needs to have somebody at home to work with them. They can't be left alone. You know, and high school kids will not attend the classes and have poor attendance and therefore can't meet the requirements for graduation. So rather than have all that hit us in their senior year, we need to be monitoring all through, and just like we do with the kids that we have. If they're not in class, we go looking for them. But when they're out away from us, it's hard to keep up with where they might be and what they're doing. But we're still responsible. We will be responsible in this model too.
So, Mr. Pike, that's just talking about the consortium students? It wouldn't necessarily apply to our VA students, or would it apply to both?
Our VA would be even more. It's all our responsibility. We're not working with anybody with this high school.
Right, but do you think that bill is just, so you're saying?
I think it's mostly
just for
like the consortiums and the virtual standalone academies. We're hoping it's not where we're using as a model. Of course, part of it is not to force teachers to teach, you know, in person as well as virtually. So that's the main purpose of it. So it's still a lot not been decided, and so we're still waiting to see how that transforms. But we've hopefully have set ours up with the right criteria to prove to anybody that asks that it's built on success. We want it to be successful for the child.
And we set our program up the right way, which we felt was best for our families and our kids this year, which is having a teacher majority of the time and not having class sizes of 100, 150 like we've heard other places. So I think a lot of what that comes down to is there are people that abuse the way you can do it and pack classes with one teacher, and we try to keep the class sizes to be the same Dorchester 2 standard. Of course, it's a little bit higher in the virtual, but and it was okay with that, but it wasn't the 100, 150 numbers that you hear out of some other places. That is drawing a response out of some of the lawmakers, in my opinion. That's where I think it's coming from.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank y'all.
Well, at this time, I know the audience is here to see what we know and what, if anything's changed on our stance of what we're doing with face masks and what we're doing with in the protocols that we have in place, and we want to address that. We've sent out so much information to so many people, but maybe not necessarily the same information to all the people. So we're trying to summarize that and put everything tomorrow should be uploaded to our website. It's current as of tonight. And we have really been working closely with the State Department of Education, with DHEC, with CDC, other school districts, and our medical university partners. And we too are looking at the studies that come in from whatever, pro and con, and if you want to see a study for it, you can find 100. You want it against, you can find 100 too. And you can plow all day through those kinds of things. We're interested in the people that are charged with making decisions that are being used nationally. And I know people have criticized who's in charge of DHEC and who's this and who's that. That has nothing to do with the information we hopefully are getting is correct and fine, and that we look at the trends, and it's all the data. No one piece of data dictates anything. It's a trend. You know, you get your daily report, board members, of what happens in our schools each day. How many kids are quarantined, how many teachers are quarantined, our yearly average, how that's looking, as well as how many actually are out for COVID itself. We are doing great contact tracing when it's reported that someone has COVID and they've tested that way, that we immediately talk to the people involved to find out who they've been around more than 15 minutes without mask, with mask, all the various things. Then it's determined who may be really subjected to the virus there, and it's our responsibility to notify those people and they're quarantined immediately. However, sometimes it's a lot of names are given, but it's proven that the contact was not that constant, not that close, and the quarantine is not done. The nurse gets beat up as she is the one that has to give that information, but that if you're going to have something, you're going to follow it through. You can't just pick and choose. And the parent may say, well, my child's third time they've been quarantined. Well, that's what we're dealing with here. If it happens, it happens. That's why we're doing all the safety precautions we can to try to minimize the number of people that we have to quarantine, the number of people that have to stay home. So that's one of the purposes of doing it. And each of these groups of people are telling us the main thing here is social distancing. Not necessarily the mask, not necessarily the plexiglass. You must be able to social distance a minimum of 6 feet. As we told you before we went face to face, we were not ready. We were not anywhere close to 6 feet. So that's why the plexiglass, that's why the mask, to get us down to 3. And the high schools and the middle schools with 28 in all of our classes, 28 bodies my size in a classroom, 800 square feet. It makes it tight, and you're within the 3 feet sometimes. That's why the protocols are in place, and that's been recommended by every source that we deal with. Plus, you have a policy, ADD, school board policy, that tells us that you're basically, let's see what it says, to reduce the spread of the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, recommends that a face covering be worn in public settings when other school distancing measures are difficult to maintain. The district will consider the circumstances in the community and consult local health officials for the implementation of this policy. So that is your policy, and we've been following that. That was the orders that was given by you, the school boards. The State Department, it keeps changing their mind one way or the other. I mean, the governor closed us down, read us the Riot Act, closed a lot of restaurants and other places down, and they bring them back on the different reasoning, and it seems to be more political than perhaps what is genuine, and I don't know what information they're using or not using. No one in this room could outdo me as far as I would like to see this go away tomorrow. The pandemic was not brought on by anybody that I know of. I can't call anybody for advice because nobody knows any more about it than I know. So the only people I can go with is the CDC and organizations like that and Medical University. We've partnered with them, and I feel like we get very good information from them. She was the first to come in here when we were talking about face-to-face and told everybody there's no reason why you couldn't go face-to-face. She was a major player in bringing that to us that night. That turned a lot of heads. But she said, let me caution you, you still need to do the social distancing. That's when I told you our numbers were such we couldn't. Our principals have done a wonderful thing of finding big spaces like the cafeterias, auditoriums, gyms to put the large classes in. All the other classes were raised from 15, 20, 22, up to the 28 to get the 35s down to 28. So most all of our classes are at that, but they're right on the 28. You can't get any more desks in the room. It's there. We moved out all the furniture in the teachers' rooms. These are big kids in the high school, real big. That is our concern. If you walk through, Ms. Wimberly, I think you visit all of our schools, and I'm sure you will attest that it was crowded conditions. That is our concern. That's mainly been it from day one. When people say, well, the private schools, I've talked with every headmaster in the area. All private schools are not maskless. That's not so. Plexiglass they're not using. Pinewood tells me right off, we don't use plexiglass. Our biggest class has 15 in it. 15. Well, we have 28. That's 13 more students, same size room, about 800 square feet, he told me. There's no conversation in this. So we're trying to do those kinds of things. I didn't make these policies up. I'm only telling you what you asked me to do, give you an update of where we are and how we got to where we are. You can trace all of this thing, everything I'm saying is on our website to show you how we've done this. There is no, people write me and say, I'm in charge, I'm not king. There's a board policy that I did not make. So the board is involved. There is regulations from these organizations. I have no control over what they say. I look at the daily information, our weekly information you've been getting on Thursdays. The last 3 weeks, it has gone up. We're right now at a rate locally, it's even to what we were back in early parts of the year, or maybe January, back in October, back in September, back in July. And those are scary numbers. They were really dropping. We felt so good about them. Not that they're going through the roof, but they're rising somewhat. So we're real concerned about that, even with the masks and everything that we've done. And I think our numbers being what it is because of all the things we've tried to do. Is it perfect? I can't say that. Is it always worked? I can't say that. I'm not a medical professional. I'm telling you that's why we do what we do. So we talked to other school districts, what they're doing. There's only one school district in the state that might be doing more than us, and that's been all along, it's been probably Berkeley County. They seem to have a different setup over there, but no other place in South Carolina has any restrictions been eased, none. If anything, some are being made by the State Department. Last week, they were given a deadline, get face-to-face, or we're going to close you down. So that was that many districts, dozen still not face-to-face, being forced to go face-to-face. So for whatever reason, that's their business. But we keep a check on all those things to make sure we're not missing something. And I'm open to any other suggestions when we get the studies. I read the studies. And of course, as several of you try to allude, one for it, and somebody mentioned there's something against it. I received this today. It said, did the so-called Stanford study really show face masks are ineffective against COVID-19? And this fellow who, I don't know who he is, he could be made up, he'd be a crook. He's trying to say the fellow that did the study or says he did the study was once a Stanford professor, like a part-time, and not really who he says he is. He's not affiliated with Stanford, and they've kind of denied it. I don't know. I just got this. I'm not going to get involved in it. The Stanford study is one of many things I've read against, but there's many. The Medical University today sent me 27 articles saying why it was beneficial and not harmful to students. So that came from Medical University. I'm not making this stuff up. So you can sit there all day and find it on either side of the coin that you want it on. Some of these people, it's dissertations, it's what they've looked at, but it's not something they can validate or it might not be reliable. Somebody may have hit a home run, but because it's so much out there, it's hard to pinpoint what is really accurate and what is not accurate. So, and I'm not in a position to pick and choose those. That's why we chose the sites that we did, the people that we're looking at. And I asked the Medical University about the Stanford thing. I sent to her and I questioned, why are y'all saying this when this is coming out of a reputable university? I want to know why I'm getting this. Our public is sending me this. How do I respond? And that's when I got this information that somebody got off the internet for whatever site. Again, it could be all bogus. I don't know. I don't have the time to try to prove who's right or wrong. But again, it's two sides to every story. So that's one of the big issues. We also have the State Department who keeps changing their mind. I talked with Mrs. Spearman as late as Friday. She said, if you've got a board policy, you must stick to your board policy. She pushed that. We're not making you do it, but we're telling you, Mr. Pye, if you're social distance, then you probably should begin to try to relax to see how things are doing. We're okay with that at recess, which we're doing. I told the principals, I think last Thursday when we met, we decided that's time now to begin doing things like recess and outside. We cannot have recess with one teacher and 125 kids and no mask on. It's not going to work, y'all, in the same area. So if you're going to take your class out of 20 kids or 25 kids, then you're responsible to watch them. They have the mask off, but you're making sure they're not out there hugging each other and doing all those kinds of things if we really believe this social distancing rule. So you got to have it one way or the other that confuses kids. They have to understand this is a mask break. This is an opportunity to take it off, have fun, that kind of thing. So I'm going to leave that to our teachers. They love their kids. They know what they can and cannot do, and that is acceptable. That's coming down from the federal government through the states, so it's not there. But other than that, they've not ruled any further than that. Molly Spearman said she is suggesting strongly that people continue doing what they're doing till the end of the year, and she's hopeful the beginning of next year that we'll find a whole different thing. I insisted that we as a district are already planning to be without masks, without plexiglass. We want to start the school fine. I don't want to yank things out in front of children, put it right back in front of them the next week. That's not good. So we want to make sure of what we're doing and how we're looking at our numbers to make sure that this time we're scheduling before, like we did last year. We've got a chance now to know what our rooms will hold, and we can try to limit those numbers and try to continue to hire teachers, which I'm doing, over and above, to try to lower the class sizes so I can get more, have large enough classes that won't have to maybe do all these precautions and begin toward a move down. That is our goal. But I don't know what the pandemic holds, that some of these strands could take a fire tomorrow morning and do something. I don't know. I have no idea. So we will be monitoring this, and if we see any type of improvement, we're not waiting for it to go low. Let somebody mention that. I haven't said that in a long time. I don't think it's going low anytime soon. I want to know if it's careless or if it's something that we can carefully move into a safer realm and get back to normal as much as possible. That is our goal, and we have lots of things that I think has to be in place. You can't just wake up and do a magic wand. I have all kind of information from Medical University where she basically says, stay the course, do what you're doing, at least for the rest of the year. That came from her with all kind of support documentation and not against it, and all this will be available on the website. And then CDC guidance on school reopening says you have to be 6 feet apart. They softened it by going to the 3-foot rule, provided you could do social distancing. Well, that's our issue. We've gone to the 3 feet, but we can't guarantee social distancing if we did not have any protocols in place. That's the issue that we're faced with. And so, and that's something we are always working on. And then there's, this is just all kind of articles she sent us support, and I won't bore you with all those. I'll make sure you have copies of all that. Any questions?
Mr. Pye, I'd just like to make a comment. First of all, I'm really happy to see that y'all are thinking forward far enough ahead and planning for next year to be normal. You're making the plans of starting next year without masks, without plexiglass, everything. So I'm really happy to see that y'all are making those plans and moving forward with that. And as you know, I spoke to Mr. Pye earlier today and asked him to talk about this simply because I think he and I had conversation a few weeks ago about children being on the playground and being able to have a relaxation of the mask policy while being on the playground. And because at that point, social distancing was, you were able to do that on the playground as long as we did not have overcrowded playground situations and that kind of thing and had enough teachers out to be able to watch the students. Mr. Pye told me at that time that he had spoken with, or was speaking with his principals to try to get that situation relaxed. Do you have any kind of numbers or any kind of information as to whether any of our schools are doing that at this point or have any plans of doing that?
In our discussion Thursday, there was indications, they nodded their head that they're working on that, they're doing it. They wanted me to clarify what I meant by small groups outside. I wouldn't mean divide the class up, but I was trying to, even 2 classes might be fine. But I know most of these schools schedule entire grade level with 5 classes. If it's a 5th grade class with 24, there's 5 times 24. There's too many children in a space, and some of our playgrounds, like Somerville Elementary and all, is very small. And therefore, there you're creating a problem by forcing kids to do something they don't have any options to do. But on a field like Newington and some of those schools, there, Sand Hill and all, they have huge, big, Oakbrook Elementary, they have big playgrounds. There should be no reason why they can't work on those kinds of things to make those kinds of things work. They don't have to wait to recess. Have a morning break. They have brain boosters, 2 brain boosters outside, maskless. Do that. Find some ways to be creative, and we told them we were open to any suggestions. If they want to call us, we will certainly tell them, nobody's going to get on their case. I want them to make some attempts and use the good judgment on how that should be. And And I see one of them shaking their head back. So they are doing it. Y'all are trying to do it. See right there, Flowertown's on board.
Well, I
So,
do think that the mask breaks are important. I think it's time that we move towards that, and I think, I think those are very important. So I think if there's a way that we can work that in there to where we could get those mask breaks. But then when I think on the flip side of that as well, I think about all of our academic awards, all of our graduations, our proms, everything else that are coming up. I think it's important too that we realize that we've only got a few weeks left in school. And if we know that our goals are to start the beginning of the school year completely normal, back without face mask and without plexiglass, we know that's what our plans are. I'm willing to make a little bit of a compromise there simply because of the fact that I also don't want our students to miss out on a lifelong adventure, which is a prom, which is a graduation.
that's happening.
They may not be able to go through that. If we take masks off now and we do things
That's
that are
right.
completely off now, we do those things,
They can't.
then they may not be able to do those things. So I think in that situation, I think we're thinking about the students. But on the flip side of that, I also want to say that about our policy, I have a copy of the policy in my hand, and our policy does say, first of all, I think we need to send this policy back to policy committee if I have the agreement from all of the board to do that. This policy was put in place at the height of COVID, and I think it needs to be addressed. I think there needs to be some changes in the policy, because we need to be planning for the future of life without mask and life without plexiglass. So saying that also at this point, the first paragraph of the policy does say that everyone on district facilities or in district facilities must have a mask. But then for a little bit further down, it says students. Until further noticed, all students will wear face coverings while on district property or district transportation or while attending a school-related activity. Certain classes or activities may be granted a limited exception to this requirement at the discretion of the superintendent or his or her designee. The district will provide masks to students and expects that reusable masks will be washed regularly to ensure maximum protection. So it does say that you or your designee can authorize them not to wear a mask at any time that you see.
And I'm not going to do that unless there's special needs children who cannot keep the masks on. They don't understand why they have a mask on. There are 5 of them or 6 of them in the room, and there are 3 and 4 and 5 adults. That is hideous to even think that should happen. That's the stuff I think we were talking about, but.
Yeah, but I'm relating this to
right.
mask breaks, is
But
what I'm
mask
relating
breaks
it
will be
to.
fine, but we can't, I
That's
just
what
want to
I'm
make sure people
relating it to.
understand, you can't let some of elementary do it and not Newington. You can't let 1A do
No.
it and teacher 1B don't do it. We
No.
can't send that kind of message to our parents. They need to know that whatever we do is throughout the district, we're consistent, so we're fair. We're not favoring one school over another, one grade level, because that teacher is more daring, more out there, more experienced, feels more confident this will work for her, where a beginning teacher would feel maybe ill at ease, those kinds of things. So we want that school to make that choice. If I were the principal in a school, I say this all the time, I could see me having a teacher who's deathly afraid of that and just says, no, I don't feel comfortable. Fine. I will come do recess for your class. I will enjoy having 20-minute breaks, trust me, with the kids. We'd have so much fun, and nobody'd ever know what happened. I mean, it would be a wonderful, I wouldn't have any cases of COVID or anything else, because I know what to do to make sure they had fun. All of them could jump rope for 20 minutes. They don't have to be touching, holding hands. They can do other activities. They can throw the ball from child to child around in a circle completely. What is that thing, hot ball? You hit them and they have to get out of the game. There's a lot of activities that could be done that children can be social distance while they have fun, they laugh, they smile, and they breathe.
Well, Mr. Pye, I read that paragraph only because I wanted to say
Oh, okay.
that within this policy, you have that authority to give those mask breaks.
Okay.
And while
Without changing the policy.
Without changing the policy, but while we send this policy back to the policy committee to be looked at for future uses.
Okay.
So we're good, because we were concerned about the fact that maybe we didn't have enough time to get this policy
It was,
changed
it
so
was
that you could
June
do
and
this
July.
fast break?
This was when it first started. We had no idea what we were dealing with.
So this is, like I said, we're all within the
Right.
realm of the policy and adhering to the policy by taking the
Well, I
breaks
appreciate
and
the
that.
clarification.
So I would like to pass this policy down to our policy chairman, just for, to be visited or revisited for future uses.
Well, can I just ask then, you are okay, Mr. Pye, because the policy says it's okay for these 10-minute intervals or breaks that
I'm-
the children can have?
Before we had this
that break?
conversation, I've been on this for a month or more. I've been telling the principals, this is what I feel is the right thing to do. And there was nothing before any of this was brought up. I've decided, I thought it was time to try to do those kinds of things. I know
Sure.
in the class where we have such closeness in there at long periods of time, it exceeds the 15 minutes without being social distance, all the things they claim they've proven. I'm trying to adhere to that best I can, but I felt like some of these other things could still be done because it's a different environment, especially if you're outdoors. I think that gives us a little better room.
Exactly.
I know it gives us more room.
Okay, does anybody, Mr. Farnsworth, did you have something? I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah, Mr. Pye, and I appreciate it. It sounds like, from that discussion, I think maybe there's some more opportunities than even we knew about as far as the mass breaks. It sounds like you're looking at some of the outdoor recess type activities. I did have a question, as far as actual school operations. So if a child today was in class and they, they had some anxiety or they just needed to take their mask off, what's kind of the process there? Do they have that ability? If a student raised their hand and said, Ms. Smith, I have got to take this mask off right now.
I
how
can't
is that
imagine a teacher not doing that if there was a particular reason, but it would have to be hopefully explained up front, just like if you have to go to the bathroom, you raise your hand. It's just those type of things that, if a teacher knows the child's in stress, that they allow that. I could see in the classroom, I wouldn't promote it, but if I was a teacher, I'd shut my door and I probably would say, everybody, I don't want any talking, so no droplets are going anywhere, keep your mouth closed. Let's just pull these masks off for about 5 minutes, just where you're sitting. And let's just talk and think, let's reflect, have a moment of reflection about what we've learned today, how we can be better students, better people, bring them up to the core values. She could talk about something like this while they just simply listen. But there are things like that could break it up till we get back to where we can do something, and the social distancing is no longer as primary as it tends to be now.
So not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot a little bit, because you just said it, I just want to make sure, as superintendent, the scenario that you just laid out, maybe there's a break in the classroom or something like that. Again, I understand that you don't want to put that blanket statement out.
No one's
because
going to be
that becomes a
arrested
problem.
if that's what you ask.
But are you okay with those types of scenarios if that were to happen in our classrooms?
There's nothing like, you have to follow the rules to be consistent or you send the wrong message. And you have to be consistent. You have to have conversations with your faculty. You have to have relationships with faculty members so they understand that we're there for the kids. But we have to have good judgment too. When is it appropriate? When is it not? Let's talk about it. And I think we have so many teachers in our district with great wisdom. They've had lots of kids of their own. They've been teaching a long time. They've experienced it all. And they pretty well can give us some great advice. And I think it's just worth talking about if there are any other opportunities. Our teachers are so creative, I think they can begin to think of other opportunities. All this relaxes people towards the eventual day that we are back to normalcy or some type of normalcy, that they will feel better about it and be easing into it rather than being forced one way or the other. I think that's how I view their acceptance of it. There's so many misunderstandings. There's a lot of fear. There's just a lot of situations that I don't know how to get around it except to keep people informed and work with them on the level that they're at. So I was looking to get advice from my principals, and one of them is shaking their head that this happening, so I know it will. Ms. Peter, is it happening at your school? Pletcher. Okay, but what about you having the breaks or any kind of little things like this? Are the children having any opportunity at all to remove the mask? Certainly during lunch when they're eating, I hope. Okay. Well, some of your classes, like some of your younger grades, you may only have like 15 in a room. That could be a horse of a different color versus your fourth grade that has 24. So that may be a difference of where you might see what can be done at that grade level.
And then I did have one other discussion point, specifically, and I had asked you about the quarantine process, the quarantine logistics. Can you talk a little bit about that, and I don't know if that's for Ms. Santa Maria as well. What does that look like? Again, I asked pretty bluntly, I said, if we get rid of this mask mandate, what does that look like as far as quarantine in the district? Because my concern...
All right, there'll be no contact tracing. So if a child has COVID, the whole class is quarantined, the entire class, teacher and all of them. All of you go home for 14 days.
Well, and so let me...
That's the problem.
So let me finish that. I guess the question then, is that our policy as far as what was just said, or is that from the CDC guidance? Where is that coming from?
So the reason for the masks at this point, as well as obviously being a mitigation strategy, it's allowed us to reduce that distance from 6 feet to 3 feet. Part of that stipulation, if you will, from DHEC is that if you're going to reduce the space between students and staff, they have to be behind properly utilized plexiglass as well as wearing a mask. So the trouble comes in when we have a case. If the students are seated 3 feet apart wearing masks behind plexiglass, we're fortunate we don't have to quarantine students. If they are seated without plexiglass or without masks on, then they would fall into that criteria just by nature of being 3 feet apart. So we're fortunate that we're able to keep more kids in the classroom versus home on quarantine when we follow that rule.
Also, has the quarantine been changed from 14 days to 10 days?
Unfortunately, only in settings where strict social distancing of 6 feet or more can be maintained. And so DHEC has recommended for all school districts in South Carolina that they continue to follow a 14-day from last exposure quarantine, since we cannot maintain 6 feet or greater social distance in schools.
So again, I think going back to the quarantine issue, like it or not, I think that's an issue, and it begs the question again, if that's our policy, I don't know if we need to look at that. I don't know where that comes into play, because again, God, I don't think y'all believe us. I really don't, because I see the faces out there. Nobody wants this junk. Nobody wants it. But the fact of the matter is, we've got all this other stuff. Do you really think, Mr. Pye, do you think everybody in here, do you think every single one of these administrators, do you think 3,500 people in this district do you think they don't give a crap about, they don't give a crap about our children? Do you honestly, in your heart of hearts,
Justin,
do you think that?
I have a...
You thought our kids going back from day one.
So please.
Madam Chair, I apologize. I will bring it down. I just want to go back to the quarantine question.
Yes. Address the board, please, Justin.
The quarantine question, would you foresee the numbers of quarantine, the number of students that we have out of our schools, would you see that ramping up if we were to remove the mask?
That's why we haven't changed it. That's it in a nutshell. We feel blessed that we have the numbers that we have, and they're much better than I ever thought. I'm so pleased with it. It's like there's only one to go way is up. I can't imagine you do with everything overnight that it's not going to go up. And I can't imagine anybody would think that. How much it goes up, I don't know. And there's so many theories out there who it affects and doesn't affect. Our teachers, the vaccinations, I wish that everybody would have done it. We're showing about 60% of staff vaccinated. 40% at this point are not and don't have any intentions to be, and there's no law that says they have to be. So because they're not there, they're transmitters of it too, to children as well as children to them. However, it goes back and forth because they bring it in from adults. That's how it's carried from one adult back to another, and the children are in the middle of all of this. And of course, some of them get it with a case that could really be damaging for life for them. Rare, but it is happening. We've had 100 of those cases in South Carolina in recent months, so it's growing, that number, because this new strand from the UK supposedly is aiding that course of that. At least that's what I was told, but again, I'm no expert. Yes.
Ms. Wimberly?
I have a question for Santa Maria. So can you talk a little bit about the wearing of the mask isn't just to protect the person who's wearing it, correct? Because I know everyone is kind of saying for choice, but it's hard to give a choice when your action affects everyone in the classroom with you, right? So can you kind of explain that for us?
Sure. So just like the plexiglass, just like the social distancing, it's a mitigating strategy. So it's not foolproof. It's not to say if you and I weren't sitting in close contact, both wearing masks, it's impossible for one to give the other COVID. But it's an added layer of protection. And as you said, it's to protect others around you, not necessarily just to protect yourself.
So if you had a student who was asymptomatic and wearing or not wearing a mask, and they ended up testing positive, then other people around them would be forced to quarantine, correct?
Correct.
And they may not know it. I'm saying if they're asymptomatic and not wearing a mask, that could still lead to others being quarantined, not just affect them, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Correct, yes. If anyone who meets that close contact definition, regardless of mask use, would have to quarantine if they are a close contact, and certainly the risk of spread would be greater without mask use.
I think the most important thing that we need to take out of this whole conversation that we've just had is that we are beginning to move forward. I mean, we're talking about the mask breaks, we're talking about taking the mask off when they go outside, we're moving forward. So instead of regressing about the way it has been, let's try to look forward to the way it's going to be, what we're working towards. And I'm pleased with what we're doing. Just like I said a few minutes ago, I would rather go at this slowly so as not to affect our end of the school programs for all of our students and possibly have them missing those most important life events. So I am thrilled that we are moving forward with this. I'm thrilled that we're having the breaks, we're talking about taking the mask off. I want it just as much as everyone sitting out there and everyone that's probably listening to us. So, you know, we are beginning that, and that is the important thing. So, Ms. Crosby, did you have something that you needed to add?
Mr. Pine would like to think that I was one of those teachers you were talking about that had experience and had been in the classroom for a long time and could make reasonable decisions. And Julie, I look forward to meeting with you for us to look at this policy, because I do think that there should be some additions, some controversies made, some different things made. I am concerned about so many children. I mean, I hear one come home every day is the reason I hear this, and I ask, of course I shouldn't be bugging, but I ask every day something. I probably shouldn't say this, but you know what? This is America, and right now we're still free. Yes. Mr. Pye, I've even emailed this to you. I feel that the mask should be optional. This is and I say that because back, just like before when we were talking about, different issues, I think we have to realize that parents have to have that choice, that we have to give parents a choice. And of course, I know that you wouldn't, if a parent had a child come to school and had COVID and gave it to somebody else, I mean, they wouldn't be excited about that, don't get me wrong, or if they were to catch it. But, and Mr. Pine, I'm talking about the lower grades. I'm not talking about high school, because I know that they're like sardines in a can. And maybe they should wear masks. I really won't address that. But these young kids, you know that, Mr. Pye, you talk that little bit. I mean, they're friends. They want to be friends. They want to play. They want that openness. And like I said, as an elementary teacher, I'm sorry, I feel like that it should be a parent's choice and it should be optional. Guys, I really do appreciate that support, but I hope that most of y'all have learned, I've been on this board for 12 and a half years, that when I speak from my heart. And I speak what I feel. And if I have a third grade grandchild that comes home to me every day, great grandchild, and thank you, I asked him about the mask, and he said that on the playground, that they have spots marked on the playground, that they can go and stand in that spot and have a mask break. And I don't know if that's, how many people would be in that spot. But that when they're playing it, they do have to wear a mask. And during the day in the classroom, except for lunch, that they do have to wear them full time. And he got in trouble one day because his gator fell down, but he accepted that, and he, that's just part of the rules, like you said. The policy, Mr. Pye, like Ms. Hughes said, you've got the authority, really, to make the decisions. And Spearman basically says that, too, that she's given that authority to superintendents to make the decision that they feel like is best for their district. And I respect that, Mr. Pine, and I hope you will make the right decisions. And are you always right? No. Are any of us always right? No. But at least we try. And Ms. Hughes, what you said, I think it's hideous that these prom people and graduation have to wear masks. I mean, like I said, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And or at least give them an option for those two events, because that's just something real important in their life. I'm the policy chairman this year, and I will be meeting with Ms. Canarins and our attorney, and we will come up with some guidelines and see what we can do, and then we'll bring it back to the board for approval or see what they think. And I'm not going to put on this policy, yes, I think we should remove all masks. I'm going to try to be consistent. I'm going to try to be cooperative in any way we can to make what's best for our children. But in my heart, just like I wanted our kids to go back to school a long time ago, and I stood up for that, I felt that was right. And I still believe that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this and to meet and see what we can do with a solution we can come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Mr. Nixon?
Ms. Crosby, thank you for your placating to the crowd. It was quite obvious. The next election is 43 months away. Maybe they'll remember, maybe they won't. However, I would like to say...
You know what, Mr. Mitchum?
I would just
Here,
like to
listen to this,
say that...
Mr. Mitchum. You have no right to speak to me like that. You have no right to speak to me like that, and I'm not playing any games up here. And you ought to know that by now. And if you don't like it, you know what?
Okay, guys.
I'm getting to my point.
Listen,
Hold on.
listen, Brian,
I'm getting to my
you should
point.
not be talking to the individual board member. It should be to the entire board.
I'm talking, well, I said that, well, let me also say that I'm not speaking for the entire board, I'm speaking for myself. You often try to speak for the entire board, and that's fine. I'm saying if you want to make a motion about taking mask off, then you're free to do that. If you get a second and you get the votes, then you're free. It's not all on Mr. Pye. It can be on this board. So don't think about transferring the power all the way to Mr. Pye, because you sit on this board as the other 6 of us do. So that's what I'm trying to remind you of.
I don't need to be reminded of such. And I'm also on the policy committee, which I've been on this, like I said, I've been on every committee in this board since I've been here. But I don't appreciate a board member being so rude and ugly, but I can certainly return it.
Well, I'm just reminding you because, again, you were blaming it all on Mr. Pye just a little
I was
while
not
ago.
blaming Mr. Pye.
You made it
I said,
sound
Mr.
like
Pye,
he
I
was the
respect
person
you,
that made the
you will make a
decision.
decision that's correct.
Watch
I did
the
not
video.
blame
Watch
anything
the
on him.
video.
He's worked his butt off round the clock. I have never blamed him anything.
Watch the
I have
video.
said that I feel like that he will make the decision that's in the best interest, and that's what I mean.
Ms. Wimberly?
I was just going to say that I think, a lot of what we've heard tonight is people asking in a very fair way that we reevaluate, we look at what we're doing. I asked that of Mr. Pye, and I think he, has done that. He's looked at what the CDC says and what DHEC says. I also think that we need to involve Dr. Eckerd. I know you said you spoke with her, but I think, what you said, Gail, I agree. We need to look at moving forward, but I think that we need to have someone like that involved as we move forward, because she is a medical expert. She helped get us back into school. We've relied on her. Things like this study and stuff like that, all that needs to be looked at, absolutely. And I think having a medical expert guiding us as we do that would certainly make everyone feel better, because I just think that's a big piece of it. And we all want to move forward. We all want to research this and reevaluate in a fair way, but using the right information and the people who know the right information. So I would suggest that that's the next step, having her involved as we move forward, at least using her expert advice as we did to get back in school, and have done so, and everything has really gone well from all that I'm seeing. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Thank you, Ms. Wimberly.
Madam Chair, just very, very quickly, and what I want to, I agree, yes, believe it or not, I really do. I think it should be a parent's choice. But there's a bigger picture there. The problem is, it's very easy to say that, right? And again, I agree with that statement, but when you look at it from a logistical perspective of the district, and that's why, again, I ask questions for a reason. That's why I asked the question about quarantine, because the bigger picture is, yes, if we give parents the choice of whether they send their children to school with masks or not, that's perfect. The problem is there's other parents that we're not giving a choice to when their students are then required to be quarantined when they may not have been today. That's, again, and I don't know if that's a problem we can solve or not. That's why I was asking the question, Mr. Pye. If that's a problem we can solve, and we don't take that choice away from parents, because again, we have to listen to all sides. We may not like all the sides, but we have to listen to every single side of this thing. And so if we're going to talk about the choice for these parents, what about the choice that we're taking away from these parents when we quarantine their kids? That's the problem. If we can fix that, 1,000%. If we could fix that right now, 1,000%, I would say get rid of the mask right now. But that's the issue. That's the issue. So that's where I think it needs to start. That's where it needs to be discussed. How do we fix that? If there's no fix, then we can't do anything. If there is a fix, absolutely, let's move forward. Let's rock and roll. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say or whatever? Okay, we're going to move on to our financial report. Ms. Meunier.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Mr. Pye. I've given you, you'll find it. I hope you found it in your.
Just 1 second, Tina. Let's give them an opportunity to leave. Thank you, Tina. I apologize for that.
That's okay. I was hoping if I talked, they would be quiet, but sorry about that. Okay, so this evening, your financial reports that are presented are for February 28th of 2021. As we've been also showing the comparisons to the prior year, you'll see that for this year's balance sheet, our assets are at $66,483,650. A little bit of difference from this year versus last year. We had a timing difference in some of our claims for our grants. We had a late grant award for our IDA program, so we weren't able to claim any of that until we got the award from the state, which we did get. So you'll see that that money is showing there, which we will be claiming for the end of the March quarter. And we did not have that in February 2020. That's why the numbers look a little different there. Also in our liabilities and fund balance section, we had a tax anticipation note payable this current year. We weren't sure how the funding, the cash flow was going to take place coming from the county or from the state, so we entered into a tax anticipation note. We did pay that off in March. So at the end of February, our total fund balance was at $54,137,820, which we balanced with our liabilities fund balance, balanced to our assets. On the next page of the report is our schedule of revenues, expenditures, and also the change in the fund balance to show you how it balances out on the revenue expenditure side. We did get that tax anticipation note, but as you can see, our local tax money did come in stronger than we anticipated, so we did better there. Our state money did come in a little bit lower, and that was mainly due to our student count being reduced by almost 1,100 students. And then the transfer from other funds this year, there was a timing issue where we transferred more in this February versus last February. You also see on the expenditure side that our expenditures are coming in lower this year as compared to last year. So overall, we'll have a savings this year because of our expenditures being lower. The next report is our balance sheet for the food service fund. We are almost at a dead break even, almost zero. We just, unfortunately, as you'll see on the next page of your schedule of revenues and expenditures, we see a large decline in the number of meals that were being served this year. It was just a very unusual year. So our revenues are really a lot less. But on the other side of that, we're holding tight to our expenditures, working with Sodexo, and they're holding tight to that. So again, we're also at a dead break even. The other reports that were included in your board packet are the school activity funds. We showed the beginning balance as of July 1st of 2020, then the receipts and expenditures for the time period of July 1 through February 28th, also any encumbrances at that time, and their ending balance as of February 28th. So we did not notice any school balances that were out of line whatsoever. And so those were the reports that we had put into your packet for all the schools. So if anyone has any questions on that.
I'll make a motion to accept that as information.
Excellent, thank you. I also wanted to share one good piece of information that I uploaded to your board packets also. The board of trustees had approved a resolution for us to refinance one of our GO bonds that was outstanding. We were able to do that last week. The interest rate was at 4.19%. It's now 1.88% for a lock. So that equals $9.8 million over the next 20 years. That will go towards our debt payments. So we're very happy about that. So thank y'all for allowing us to do that. So thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is our facilities and construction report. Mr. Tony Souls.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Pye. You have the full report. I just want to highlight three things on the report where we have some major activity. The Somerville Elementary bus loop and district office parking. We have that contract in place. We're going to issue the notice to proceed tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and start on the groundwork out there this week, and hopefully we can get everything turned around so that as soon as the general contractor pulls out of the district office, we can have that contractor go in and start working on the front parking of the district office and the horseshoe there beside Somerville Elementary. We're having a pre-construction meeting hopefully in the morning if we can get all the players in place. At the new middle school, the early site work package has been approved. It was approved several days after our last meeting, and they immediately started clearing land out there, and that's where we are in the process at the new middle school. The district office renovation, they're doing some drywall touch-up, installing a few pieces of drywall in the front part of the building there. They're continuing the rough-in work, and that's starting to wrap up with the rough-in, and they're starting to do some trim-out work in most of the facility, which is a good sign. We've started work on the new entrance and ramp on the front of the building, and that's going to look fantastic when we get done with that. And that, in a nutshell, is everything that's going on.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Souls?
I want to add something.
Yes, sir.
I know we've been talking about, but I've talked to you the last couple of weeks, and I'm glad to get the news about the parking lot. However, will we be able to do that with EdCon running so late and over? As of today, I think I'm looking at around the 1st of July, and it's never when I say this, so probably mid-July of us getting in there. Will that any way, shape, or form, us getting furniture in there, us moving trucks in there, I don't want my parking messed up. So the bottom line is, we're going to wait till end of July to go ahead and do it around the building. Go ahead, I want Somerville Elementary and all that done so they're ready for the buses to come on first day. I don't want to confuse children. They need to know where the bus is going to drop off from now on, and the school can practice before school begins and that stuff. So, and span overflow parking, some elementary overflow parking, and we'll have a place for our employees to park all in the back while the front parking lot's being done. And we can just cut off, since we own everything on the street but one house, that we can probably make that happen.
Yes, sir. We've already made the bus loop our priority. That was our priority going into this whole project to begin with, and that remains our priority. And we have already had a coordination meeting between the general contractor that's doing the paving for the bus loop and EdCon. So we got all the parties talking to one another. EdCon has actually had a discussion with the contractor that's going to do the bus loop parking to do some paving for them on their way out.
Okay.
So it's going to be a coordinated effort, and hopefully as we wrap up the bus loop in the back, we can roll to the front, and
Okay,
EdCon
so it will
roll
be-
out one side and we'll start paving in the other. So
Fantastic.
that's the plan.
And hopefully everybody's ready
Fingers crossed.
by mid-August is my goal,
My
at the
goal is
latest.
July 31st.
I really would love that, because with rain and stuff, you never know what kind of delays we might run into, and I think that's good. And so,
July 31st is the date on the contract.
well, would you do me a favor too? You're on the SMEG board. Would you make sure that they understand our timeline with this too? Because I know they're doing fencing, and I know a lot of their projects are done, but they may need to get access in and out of there, and maybe coming up on the field side, and they need to know that once we get started, we got to keep that closed off. So we need to coordinate with them also, is what I'm saying, so we don't mess them up.
Next week, that meeting should take place
Okay.
on one day next week. We're in the planning phase of that, so that's going to be another piece of that coordination puzzle that we're going to put in there.
I'm gonna have to hire them to help me with my projects, 'cause let me tell you what, I've never seen such stuff getting done massively and beautifully and well done. They're out there ahead of their schedule, I'm sure, and so I'm gonna keep pace that we all kind of make sure that we're on the same page and it all comes together at some point in time.
Well, hopefully that some point in time will be July 31st.
I hope so. That sounds real good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Okay, next on the agenda is our personnel report. Board members, if you have no problem, we'll do this in open session. You should have received the personnel report of the resignations for the 2021 school year in your folders. I need a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Guthrie, second. Second by Ms. Wimberly. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, moving on to new business. May 10th is on our agenda to discuss May 10th. May 10th is the day that we will be presenting our budget to county council. They have us on the schedule from 5 to 6:30 in that area. So it's also a day for our board meeting. So they've changed it, okay?
Good.
So it's at 4 o'clock. So if it's at 4 o'clock, then we probably will be okay to return back here for a board meeting, because they normally allow us to leave with a few people left there in case there's any kind of questions or whatever. So I guess there's not a whole lot of need for discussion on that one then.
No, because that's something on your new business.
Okay, so we're good on the board meeting then. We'll just return here and have our board meeting as regularly scheduled. before we move on, I've got one other thing that I would like to do, and this week is After School Professionals Week. So I would just like to give a big shout out to our 150 after-school program professionals that we have working for us. They have been there tirelessly through all of this, working very diligently, trying to accommodate parents, students, their needs, and done a very good job of it. We also have summer camps that are that they've got planned, and from what I'm being told, we've got since Friday when everything went out, when it first opened up, the sign-ups opened up, they already have 100 students signed up for the the summer camp program. So I just think it's important that we know, they know that they are a huge part of this team. They're a huge part of Dorchester too, and we could not have done any of this without them and them pulling their load and playing their part in this. So I would just, I also, there's one other thing. We have, our program has been voted the best after-school program 3 years in a row by the Reader's Choice Award. So we have a great program out there. So we have something that, yet another gem in Dorchester too that we have to be proud of. So thank you everyone, all of our after-school workers. You are very appreciated, and know that we could not have done this without any of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
If I could mention one thing, the turf is down on the new field, the new turf is down. The fence is down over on the span side, so if you wanted to just ride by, you can see the turf. It looks like, whoa. I mean, it's beautiful, but if
Is it green or blue?
Huh? So I just wanted to let y'all know that the turf is down if you wanted to go by and take a peek.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Any other new business that needs to be discussed for the good of the board? Okay, moving on to our board committee report. Budget workshop update, Mr. Brian Mitchell.
Tina presented a workshop. Sorry, thank you. Tina presented a workshop last week on the 21st. Our next workshop will be 1 week from today at 4 o'clock in this very same place. And so maybe she will surprise us and have more good news at that time. We're counting on you. You got a streak going, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchum. Facilities Committee, Mr. Farnsworth.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. It's certainly a busy few weeks as we finalized all of our facilities visits. We went to, of course, every site, and just a huge thank you, Mr. Souls, Mr. Giant is back there, Ms. Batten, Mr. Pye, his team. A lot of folks have to come together to make those facilities visits happen. So our next step, you know, we all took notes. We went through all the different information from our visits. We are planning to meet later this week, Friday afternoon, so if anybody would like to join us. Lee has that information, so you're more than welcome. But at that meeting, we will kind of finalize our takeaways from all that, circle back on some of the projects. You know, there's stuff as we're walking through that can be, Tony and his crew are amazing, that they can do kind of like that. And so just to circle back on that kind of stuff and make sure it's getting done. And so again, a really good year for the Facilities Committee. And we will rock and roll Friday afternoon, and then we will come back to the board if there are any larger kind of capital needs. We will then come back to the board to kind of determine that stuff. So again,
Mr.
thank you for allowing me to do that.
Mr. Farnsworth, what time is the Friday afternoon meeting?
I believe we said 1. Yep, so Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next on the agenda is our teacher forum. Lindsay Dukes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Pye. It is my pleasure tonight to update you on our teacher forum. The focus of the Dorchester District 2 Teacher Forum for this current school year has been our scholarship and mentoring committees. In the past, we've looked at the advocacy committee as well as the instructional committee, but given the limited time frame we've had this year, we elected to focus on our scholarship and our mentoring opportunities. We want to support our next generation of educators. Therefore, we are very excited to be able to award 3 $1,000 scholarships, one to each high school, to graduating seniors who are pursuing a degree in education. And we discussed this, we've met twice so far, we've discussed this and agreed that reflective of our mission to provide both college and career readiness opportunities to our students, we would also like to award an additional scholarship to a graduating senior at each high school who best exemplifies both the vision of that school and who is preparing to enter a career certification program, they would have it Trident Tech or another 2-year program, and or the workforce. We feel strongly that traditionally we award students who are going to a 4-year college, and with the changing landscape following graduation, we really want to recognize those students who have persevered and worked hard, even if they chose not to go that 4-year educational route. So we are continuing to collect donations for those awards at each school site, and we will provide an updated balance concerning the monetary value of that second award as soon as we get all of our donations in. Each school has been extremely creative in collecting donations. Fundraising has included things such as jeans passes, which at this point in the year is every teacher's favorite friend. We have had raffles for various prizes, as well as the sale of different apparel items to get those donations in. And I would just like to say on a personal note, I have been amazed at the willingness of our teachers to donate to such a worthwhile cause to our students. So that has just been extremely heartwarming. Given the unique circumstances of this year, we are excited to be able to recognize our graduates who really are the ultimate champions of the productive struggle this year. These students have really had every roadblock thrown in their way and to impede their path, yet they persevered and blossomed in spite of these hardships, and we feel strongly about recognizing them. Recipients of each scholarship will be notified in writing prior to their senior awards nights at each high school. Our second focus, so we recognize that we have a tremendous responsibility to support all of our educators, but most especially our newest educators who are coming into the field. Our new educators this year, their journey into this school year has certainly not been the proverbial walk in the park. As a forum group, we would like to continue to support and mentor our new teachers from this past school year, as well as our incoming teachers to the 2021-2022 school year. We would like to provide these educators not only with the traditional things that we've done in terms of supplies and just CERCES and district apparel, but also with opportunities to be able to meet hopefully next year when the social distancing guidelines are perhaps relaxed or put in place so that we can meet and have fellowship with other new teachers throughout the district. You know, one of the things we talked about as a forum is that a kind word and support goes a long way on the difficult days, and we'd like to retain our excellent candidates that we have in this district. And so we definitely want to make that a priority and as a focus as we move into the next school year. So as we move into the next school year, we do plan on continuing to focus on mentoring both at the school levels and the district levels. It has been a pleasure to work with the 51 other members of the Teacher Forum group this year. They have really poured their heart and souls into sometimes an impossible situation. And so it is just my pleasure and my honor to work with them and to represent them. So thank you again for your continued support and for allowing me to update you this evening.
Thank you very much. So good to have you here. Okay, board members, We have an executive session for personnel recommendations for hire. I need a motion, please. Motion. Huh? Oh, I skipped over that, didn't I? I'm sorry. I was in a hurry to get our teacher forum up there. Okay, sorry about that. Public comments. Mary Rita Watson.
For the month of April. So that was so exciting, and we appreciated that. Good evening, board members and Mr. Pye. You all know I'm Mary Rita Watson. I am a 4th and 5th grade teacher of Read 180 students that I love. And I'm here with our Somerville Education Association update. First, I want to thank all of you for your tireless efforts. I know it's often not thanked enough, and so we do appreciate you, especially those of you who've been into the schools during this pandemic. Ms. Wimberly, teachers have been, I mentioned to you before, the teachers have been talking about how they appreciate the fact that you're coming in and just getting to know what's going on, because I know you're the newest member. Also a shout out to all those working in the school setting, both certified and classified. I mean, especially the classified people, not that we're not working hard, but the things they do and the risks they're taking, you know, before and even now that we're all vaccinated, or a lot of us are, have been just extreme. And so I would love for you to reconsider that additional $500 that they never got. The last time when we got $1,000, I mean, I think that every teacher you ask would say they deserve that if we couldn't even give them more. So you know, I know there's monies coming, and I know that bonuses can be a part of that for COVID for the things that they're doing. So maybe that's something we could look into. I remember I talked to you about a lot of times the discussion always is COVID, 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 and again tonight it's COVID, but I'm going to save that for last in case I don't have enough time, because there are a couple other things. One is a racial justice training that we did a poll through the SEA, and we asked our members if that was something that they might be interested in, and they are. Although the board and districts might be a little leery of that, and there's some pushback there from the community, knowledge is power. And so understanding how racial justice affects the lives of our students, and of all colors, no matter who we are, it would be best for us to be able to deliver instruction with that kind of meaningful content behind it. Not pushing one side or another, but just with that knowledge of bias. And so if that's something you would consider, we can talk to Mr. Pye as well. I don't feel like we should be afraid of those conversations, although they can be uncomfortable. They need to take place, and we need to embrace them, and we need to support that kind of training for our teachers and for our staff members. Additionally, opting out of testing. I'm not sure that our community understands that. I know that our teaching community doesn't understand that. So if we could get some clarity, and I think we're on our way to that clarity, so that would be great. Masks, we did a poll. Teachers are not for unmasking at this point. We feel that, you know, I was involved in a COVID situation. I got it. About 8 members of my class had to go out. The whole next door class, that was the hot spot, they all had to be quarantined, so it puts a lot of people at risk, more than just those who are not wearing the mask, and the parents who are having to take off from work. It is huge. And so I really, you know, at least for this year, please reconsider or just consider the fact that masking is appropriate at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
Yes, ma'am. Oh,
No,
you said
I said
thank you.
thank you. Okay, next is Ken Greenstreet.
Evening. Have you noticed a number of New York tags in the area lately? Millions of Americans moved in 2020. What allows Americans to move when many in the world cannot? Freedom is never more than a generation away from extinction. The AP U.S. history book being used in DD2 has over 700 pages in it and only 2 pages of useful information on the Constitution. The practice AP exam at the end of the book does not have one question about the Constitution. The preamble to the South Carolina Constitution states in part, "We, the people of the state of South Carolina, in convention assembled, grateful to God for our liberties, do ordain and establish this Constitution." Here are some communist goals from 1961. 1961, 60 years ago. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. 60 years later, in modern language, racist. Eliminate prayer on any phrase of religious expressions in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principles of separation of church and state, which of course is not found in the Constitution. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. By their fruits ye shall know them. The communist mindset has borne fruit in American schools and society. John Adams observed, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Today, more laws are passed for the gain of politicians or are required to correct human behaviors that in the past only required parents and common sense to learn. So back to my question. What allows Americans to freely move? Anybody know? It's the Ninth Amendment. It allows, for example, the right to get married, raise a family, choose not to have children, or pursue an occupation of your choice. I bet you not one high school senior knows that. Not one. Best way to get rid of the Constitution? Ignore it. Essentially, this amendment states any rights or liberties not given to the federal government are retained by the people. We need to teach not only the words of the Constitution and their meaning, but also what the Founding Fathers experienced and studied in their lives that caused them to give us this great document. So, changing gears. I wore the mask tonight because I'm trying to be a good citizen and respect the sign on the door. But I put little credence in the federal government this year or last year. If the federal government was truly interested in saving lives, they would test the illegals at the border and they would outlaw alcohol. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenstreet. Okay, now I need a motion to go in executive session for a personnel recommendation for hire.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Guthrie. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Farnsworth. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. And we will be returning back in open session.
So moved.
Make a motion to accept the personnel recommendation as presented by Mr. Pye and his team.
I have a motion to accept the personnel recommendation made by Mr. Pye and his staff.
Second.
Second made by Mr. Guthrie. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Guthrie, seconded by Ms. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Thank y'all very much. Have a great evening.